Hello, everyone. Give me a second. I have to turn the Christmas light on. I forgot about that. Now the setup is complete. How is everyone? I have a dog in there, but you can't see it. Well, welcome to another English stream in English, everyone. I will try to not embarrass myself today again. Thanks, Sander, for the ride with 17 people. And today we have a really, really nice guest, and we will talk of, well, a lot of things. I have some questions, but as usual, you will guide this interview. So let's bring him here. I have to click a button, right? Okay, here. How are you, Leroy?
Hey everyone. How's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. How are you? I thought this was a Stifle, but it's Strifle. So it's like an imposter. Thanks for the service, Strifle. Well, how are you? And do you want to tell everyone in here who are you? Who is Leroy? Who is Leroy doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Lee. I'm the head of developer relations for Vercel, and I help lead the Next.js community. And I've been an engineer and a product engineer, a front end developer for a really long time, like 10 years now, which is kind of amazing. And kind of slowly along my journey in front end and really loving building front end applications, I found Next.js along the way and React, and it really ignited my new journey of doing DevRel in the last, we'll say like 4 years unofficially and almost 2 years officially.
Nice. And we will talk a lot about this, but what is developer relation or DevRel?
The way I like to look at it is there's really two main pieces to what myself and my team are tackling. The first part is education or content creation, and the second part is just growing our community. And that's the larger Vercel community, the Next.js community, other open source projects that we're involved with, like Turbo Repo, helping grow that community, and just making sure that developers are learning and succeeding and enjoying using our products.
Nice. And which do you think are like the most important parts or the most important actions you made along this journey to that impacted Vercel or the company?
So at the end of the day, I think the reason why people truly love Vercel or Next.js as a product is that we really care about the details. And we go the extra mile to make sure that the smallest product experiences are very delightful and they're frictionless. And to do that, it's often a maybe boring or unappealing process of just talking to a lot of customers and hearing where they're struggling or where things maybe could be a little bit better, and then incorporating their feedback back into the product. So I often say that I'm kind of the internal advocate for the entire Vercel or Next.js or whichever community at Vercel. So I go back to Vercel and I fight for all the features that people in the community really, really want. So when people, post on a GitHub discussion or a GitHub issue, or they send me a message and they say, it would be great if, small example for ISR, if I could revalidate on demand. I say, I agree. I'm going to fight for this. And we're going to get this eventually.
And you
And we
did.
finally did.
We have on
we
demand
finally
user, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes people tweet like, I hate the next image component. And you probably think that you are ranting on Twitter and it will end there, but no, the entire DevRel team, it's looking for those messages and sharing it on the private channels and trying to get why these people is hating the next image component. So one small specific tweet can have a lot of actions inside. And a lot of features came from tweets from people. And I also get questions where, hey, I just made like a random tweet and Lero or Delva or something replied to it and helped me to solve it. And not just with the DevRel team. I mean, it's also happening with a lot of teams. But there's a lot of people amused because it's like, I don't know how they are looking at every social network and every question, at every message, and they try to help people. So I think that's awesome. We won't ask for how do you do it because it's like stalking abilities, but I think it's awesome. For people, if you have questions, you can use like how it's the for Spanish people. How is the signo de admiración called in English? It's
exclamation point.
Exactly. Exclamation point Q, like Matias Torreblanca said. You can put your question so we can see it like this. Okay, it doesn't work. I knew it. Give me a second. Featured message. I already okay. I know why it doesn't work. Perfect. Now it should. Let me see. And now it works.
Nice.
So you have exclamation mark Q and your question, and we can highlight it on screen. So let's see some of the questions, and then we can go back to the other ones. This is not a question, but Suno says, "Hi Lee, I learned state management from you."
That's awesome.
Do you have a post or something?
Yeah. So first off, thanks. I'm glad that you found that resource useful. Basically, I wrote a post about React state management that was kind of a summation of my journey with React because I've been using React for a long time. And the way that we do state in React has changed quite a bit since the inception. And there's all these different libraries. And then a new one came out, and I was like, wait, hold on a minute. Do I need to learn this? Is this important? So I tried to put all of that history into one post that also outlines the different types of state because it's helped me think about just in a more generalized concept of state when I'm working with the front end, even outside of React, just building front end web applications. Like, what does URL state mean, for example? I'm like, okay, I understand that by persisting this state to query parameters, it's helping me, even on reload, I'm able to transfer that state to the next session.
That's a really aha moment, like where I can store state. Like some people say, hey, I want to hydrate that state, I can use local storage. But well, storing state in query parameters, it's way more efficient because you don't depend on the device the client is using, and they can share that with other people and they still have that state in it. So it's something really important. One of the most important things in state management I learned, let's say, was to start seeing how to collocate state. Like that made me reduce a lot of the state I was managing in applications. Like I use it to create a lot of global state or unnecessary context state or something like that. I already sent. Is this one a past, present, and future of React state management?
Yeah.
Exactly. There, Matthias and I sent it on the chat. So awesome. Thanks for sending a link. Pablo Ramos says that he loves your background. I already love it. I already told him. And do you have it done for the Next.js Conf, right? Or you already had it before?
So when I moved into a new home about 6 months ago, and when I did, I kind of took it as an opportunity to revisit my workspace because I had been, working from home since I joined Vercel, working remotely full time. I wanted to spend a little bit more time on my, my office, right? Where I'm
Yeah.
at every day, all day. So
Let's put
I,
a special look on it. There it is.
yeah. And I decided that the black paint would be a really nice touch to just not only match the Vercel brand and the Vercel aesthetic, but it just makes for good quality. Like the way right now, as you can tell, maybe I have natural light coming from a window right here, but I'm working on getting like I have a new light and really messing with all of the different colors and
A really
fill light
big
and
new light.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's
It's fun. I really geek out about the video stuff. I love the video stuff.
yeah, and you see like the entire workspace in there, and it looks great, and you think it's awesome. But once you turn the camera, there's a lot of things happening for this to be like
Mhm.
that. Like you have a lot of lights. You have how it's this thing called for reducing the noise. You have a
Yeah,
lot of things.
yeah, I just got it's essentially like a fake wall, but it sits around my desk
It
for
sounds a lot like
when I'm recording because it helps essentially when I'm talking in my sound waves, my room had a decent amount of echo, so it bounces the sound waves back so that it doesn't echo as much. So that's
that.
good.
Yeah, well, we live in Argentina. We have a pretty tropical weather. But if you live in a place like right now, it's snowing. You can say, "Hey, I have a lot of echo. Let's open the window." So it doesn't
Yeah.
work like that for a lot of places. So you have to invest in these kind of things. And I really love how the workspace it's right now. And you also have like a pyramid, like a Vercel pyramid
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I bought that on, there's some website that has, like, custom LED, uh, like, signs, and I found that one, and I really like it because it's subtle, but it makes a
Yeah,
nice little
it
light in the
doesn't
back.
get all the attention, but you have some attention in there. It's really nice.
Yeah, and this one's fun too, this keyboard, because
Ah, it's the Vercel keyboard.
it's a Vercel branded keyboard that, we gave away at an event, like,
I
many
will
years
send the
ago.
link. Uh,
Yeah, many, many years ago.
yeah, that's quite nice. And the plants are real or are plastic ones because
So the
they look
Yeah,
so
they're
healthy.
fake.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay, it makes sense.
yeah. I wish that I could maintain this all with real plants, but it would be a little bit more difficult, so I've opted for the fake ones. I think this one looks the most real. I mean,
Yeah,
it really looks like a real tree.
yeah. No, I think it's awesome, and I also like them to be fake because if you are on a call and your plant is dying, it's really bad for like the entire image.
Yeah, oh
And
yeah.
you can focus on working if you have, but I never saw like a plant so big that it's a fake one. Uh, so awesome.
Yeah,
I really like it.
yeah.
I have like a light, like a Christmas light that it's
Mhm.
on the floor, and that's like my most important light setup.
I
Uh,
like it a lot.
Yeah,
It
I
looks
really
good.
like it. My girlfriend painted the wall, but now that I have this so closed focus camera, it doesn't uh, get appreciated. I will try to do something for it. So Edgar says, I think that I love it. The thing that I love about Next Vercel is how they want to share their passion with the people. I think
Yeah.
it's right.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate to get to work in a job at a company in an industry that I really care about. I love front end development. I love building for the web. The web is this incredible platform that enables anyone to build the next big thing, really. They can very easily go from index.html to a website live online. It's super empowering and exciting for me, especially as I've done a little work with mobile apps too. And mobile apps are very cool, but they have a different release process, and the distribution method is a little bit more challenging to actually get somebody to go install your app. The fact that I can just send a URL and people can see the,
That's
the cool
awesome.
project that I'm working on, it's just it's amazing, and that's why I really love the web.
Yeah, I think that I really get used to people or clients saying, "Hey, do you plan to make this application, this website, a mobile application?" Like people has this idea of let's make everything a mobile application that people has to download from Google Store.
Yep.
And I think one of the most important things of the web is this, like sending a link to anyone, and probably from any device they can see the exact same thing. And I really love that from the web. Also, it's really easy to debug. Most computers or devices has browsers, and you want to change something like let's debug CSS. Let's open DevTools, change this. Try to do that in React Native, and you will get a red screen.
Yeah.
The web is awesome, and people are building really good things. Um, all the things related to Web3 or augmented reality or virtual reality, the amount of things related to 3D that we are seeing on web is awesome. Like I really love
Yeah.
that the web is turning to that. Um,
Hmm.
it's really awesome. Edwin Barrones says, I learned to use Next.js with the course of Lee. Which one? Do you want to tell people about this? Well, I don't know if you have more than these two courses, but I really
Hmm.
did like React 2025 and Master Next.js. And I'm curious about React 2025 because the slogan is learn React like it's 2025. So what it
Yeah.
will happen when we are on 2025?
I know, it's so funny. It's funny because that name, I was like, this sounds kind of fun. Like, I'm going to try to teach people something that will last for a few years. And I think largely that's held up a bit. I think by the time we hit 2025, we can talk more about this later, but I think server components will be more more widely adopted, and I think that
Yeah,
will actually change how people are building applications. But just to kind of go back to the original question about courses, when I when I started to learn Next.js in, I think it was 2018, and then in 2019, I was helping my previous company implement and adopt Next.js for their main website, their e-commerce site. And at the time, the Next.js community was growing, but not nearly at the rate that it was growing kind of starting at the beginning of 2022, I would say, or 2020. And I realized that if I would run into an issue or like I had trouble building something, there just wasn't a lot of good resources online yet. Like it was still new enough that nobody had made the course or nobody had made the tutorial. And I think this is a really good point for people following along who are excited about a new technology or they're getting really excited about something and somebody hasn't built that resource yet. You can be that person to really be the
yeah,
first to kind of create those resources that help people out. Now, being first isn't always the only thing that matters, but it does help a lot of times to, be a founding member of that community per se. So I decided I was going to make a course because it sounded fun about Next.js, about the things that I had learned building Next.js for, the applications that I was building at work. And it was really my chance to try to more formally do DevRel, but I didn't really realize at the time that it would, end up being my full-time job. I was like, this just seems like something I can do on the side. And, maybe I'll make a little bit of money charging for this course. Um, so I built this first course called Mastering Next.js, which in retrospect, mastering is like a really tough course title. I think if I would
yeah,
change anything, I would probably not use the word mastering because it implies that like you're going to have a mastery level, which is obviously very difficult. But the intention with the course was just to kind of stitch together not only Next.js ideas, but some React ideas and general web dev ideas into a course. And overall, it went pretty good, but it was my first course, so I had a lot to learn. Like, the font size is way too small, like, the audio quality, like, is not nearly as good as it could be. Uh, there's just even like the design of the courses, like I learned so much from doing that one that it was a really great experience. So then I took that knowledge into my second one called React 2025, where I heard from people who took the first course and they said, I really liked this, but it would have been great if I could follow along and actually build something with you. That sounds really fun. I want to kind of code along. So I did the second course, was really difficult because I live streamed everything.
Yeah.
So it was like, I think it was like 10 to 12 live streams that were, an hour to an hour and a half long, where I
Yeah.
just slowly built things, and I built a SaaS application. And the fun thing about it was that people could follow along and they could see the code, and there was a real product that we were building. So it wasn't just like it was a more advanced demo. And what was also fun about it, that was a kind of unintended side effect, is that when I messed up on the live stream, people got to watch and understand how I debug. And some of the best feedback I got from the course was actually people liked watching me struggle. They liked
Yeah.
watching me go through, what it looks like to debug.
Yeah. I think that one of the most important things that occurred after Dan made the first um, challenge with, how is this guy called? Uh, the one with the rabbit exercise. Okay, the one that tried to make Dan center a div. And
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, well, and Dan couldn't like center the div in the first or the second try. It made it on the
yeah,
third one, and there was this entire Reddit post saying, "Hey, I'm really glad that he struggled a lot because it makes me feel more human. Like I'm not the only one going through this." So I think that people seeing other people failing or struggling with something not only helps to understand or feel better because I'm not the only one with this struggle, it also helps to see how you debug things. And
hmm
people lacks a lot of debugging skills. So seeing other debugging problems teaches a lot of things that we don't know we needed. Uh, so
yeah. Dan Dan is phenomenal, and I'll put a link to one of the blog posts that he wrote that really inspired me on a similar topic, which was, this is old at this point, but it was things I don't know as of 2018. And I remember at the time, like being part of the React community and really, looking up to the work that Dan does, and really the entire React team all does incredible work. I read this post and it really helped with imposter syndrome, because I was like, if somebody that I look up to and I think does a really good job also struggles with some of the same things that I struggle with, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to make it. And that helped me. That helps me feel a little bit better about my my coding abilities.
yeah, Dan has a lot of really nice posts. I love the in. I always send to everyone the in-depth use effect.
Mm,
It's awesome because it has something in the writing that you start reading it and say, hey, you have this problem, like you can't solve this problem, and you start reading more and says, hey, this is the problem itself, and say how I can solve this, and you read like one or two lines and it's, here do you solve this problem, and you say, hey, but this still has a problem, and you read two lines more and it says, but we still have a problem. So it's
yeah.
giving you this idea of, we are still trying to figure out something, but give you the solution afterwards. So the
hmm
entire learning process with that post is awesome. Um, Here, Shapey Mashorga says, what was the best challenge in Vercel?
That is a good question. I would say my current, um, I guess it could be best challenge or biggest challenge, but my current biggest slash best challenge is growing a team as well as growing our community, because the growth of Next.js has been exponential. And to do that and to keep up with the community's needs, their desires, to help create content for them, to help them succeed. I've had to also, grow my team and hire more people who are exceptional at what they do and help train them and help grow them. Some of the people on my team, some people, they all have really interesting backgrounds. It's really fun. Like some have completely non-traditional coding backgrounds, and we all kind of ended up in the same place, just trying to help developers learn and succeed. So I think it is a challenge to take the ambiguous of community wants something and kind of parse through it and figure out how we can actually help deliver that thing, and at the same time educate on that thing. One part of this that I've realized is really hard to understand for a lot of people is how large open source projects are maintained. And it's something that I didn't have a good understanding of until I joined Vercel and I watched how the Next.js team uh, works and how they do such an exceptional job about keeping the project moving forward and addressing community feedback. And one of the things that was kind of transparent to me is the process of how you take this feedback inbound, and it might feel like 15 different unrelated threads, and combine those together to figure out what is the root problem that people actually want here and how can we design a system that solves that, while also working under the constraint of we don't want to break people's existing applications.
Yeah.
So when we release a new change, we do it in such a way that even though it's a major version bump in terms of semantic versioning, we try to reduce the number of breaking changes for people trying to upgrade. And I think React itself, the library, does an excellent job of this too. It makes it easy for people to update to the latest versions, sometimes get security vulnerabilities or get access to new features while not having to spend hours or days trying to change things over. This kind of core principle of how they've built the framework. I recently moved a Next.js version 9 application to version 12, and I had to change like two things. I had to change the the static folder to public, which it actually allowed me to still work without that. And I had to change, I think one other small thing, and then it just worked. And that core ethos of how they built the product is exceptional and very difficult to do. So kudos to them.
Yeah, also people sometimes doesn't really understand the amount of changes that are made to the core that helps development time, or it helps build time or reduce bundle size. They're really core changes, like total rewrites, and you didn't have to do anything to opt in those. So
Mhm.
don't having breaking changes between installing different versions of Next, it's really, really a difficult task to do. So totally
Mhm.
kudos to the team. Mars says, "Hey Lee, excited to learn from you." Mars has been a guest here in the stream.
Thanks for
And
joining.
JP Mashorga says, "What did you do to join in Vercel?" Probably these courses, React 2025 and Mastering Next.js, gave you
Yeah.
like a big intro to Vercel.
Yeah, when I first started talking to the Vercel team, at the time, I was talking to my old boss Kevin, um, which I still work with, but my old boss Kevin, and I talked to him about the current needs of the team and where we saw the team growing in the future. And at the time, there was this really immediate desire of we need more help with the motion of having our customers succeed. And this turned into being a sales engineering role in the future, but at the time it was really somebody who can help out a little bit with understanding what our customers need from engineering, and then also connect the dots back to let's create solutions, which you know all about, solutions that help them succeed, as well as kind of connect all those pieces together into educational content. So, when we were very small, I joined as employee 34. I was kind of doing a little bit of all of those things. And then I had talked to Kevin and then my now boss, Hank, at the time about what the kind of future plan for that was. And the future plan was to really start a forward thinking DevRel organization here at Vercel that puts our customers first and just tries to make the web a better place, a faster place, and help developers build fast websites.
Yeah, I think, well, to mark the importance of the DevRel team, anyone from the community that tries to think something related to Next, like I have a question from Next, or I have this information I need to solve from Next, everyone knows Liro. And I think that's a really important thing from DevRel. Like linking the people to say, hey, I have some question, or I have to know something from Next, and that people immediately thinks about you, it's something related to the work you have done on Vercel. And I think that's awesome. Before
Thank
going
you.
to the next question, I will go to the last question that says, best thing of the framework is next link. People, a baby cat dies every time you use an anchor tag in Next.js. So please use next link. We can talk in Discord or whatever about the importance of using next link, but people don't use anchor tags. Going back to the questions. How is the hiring process within Vercel? Does Vercel hire interns?
So the hiring process, now that we're a much larger team now, so it really depends on the specific organization and the type of role that you're hiring for. But I can talk a little bit about specifically the hiring that I've done recently for DevRel. I think there's a general set of principles and values that are consistent across the entire company for how we hire. And then there's the more tactical specifics of how we might do the interviews depending on the team that they're on. So for DevRel, one of the exciting parts about it is that in creating a lot of content online, you're actually building an incredible portfolio that goes with you from job to job. So for a lot of the people that I ended up hiring, they've created good videos or blogs or content before, coding examples, where I was able to really see the work that they'd done and dig into it. And it made the interview more of an evaluation of that work rather than a coding quiz. I've done a lot of coding quizzes in my life, and I hope that I never have to do another one because it's just not my favorite style of interviewing. I understand that it is necessary in some places, but I try to avoid it personally. Well, I think when you're at the level of Google and Amazon or large companies like that, and you really have to have this like checklist standardized way of interviewing people, I can see how it got to the point where it's at. Do I agree with it?
You understand
No.
it, like you
But I do
agree, you
understand
don't
it.
agree, but you kind of understand it. I have mixed feelings with this too. Like I really prefer, if you have to take a coding challenge to someone, let's give them take home and let's have an interview about why did you took these decisions, but not something
Mhm.
like I'm watching you while you solve this uh, irrational complex algorithm challenge
Yeah.
in 20 minutes.
I mean, it's funny because when you look at other careers, like if I'm in a career that has to get a certification or like it says that I'm valid to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever for X number of years, when you get the new job, they're not like, hold on, take the certification again. So I don't know if something like that could ever exist for programming because things move a bit faster, but the existing certifications actually do that for some roles. Like I've seen people who are AWS architect level 27 ninja warrior who
Yeah,
they are able to get hired because they have those certifications.
yeah, but let's say the interview process is broken, already knows that, but they try to take this really complex algorithm challenge for like UI front end developer with React, like not
Hmm.
doing really complex things with React, like junior
Yeah.
or trainee developer that will just mimic designs from the design team in React. And
Hmm.
they get these really complex algorithm challenges. Like I understand that it might help you to understand how someone solves problems using like logic or critical thinking. But most of those challenge doesn't like try critical thinking. They are just complex mathematical questions. And well, it doesn't help a lot to understand if someone is fit or not. In one of Dan's interview with a company, they took him like a really complex algorithm challenge. And after the interview ended, they say, hey, we won't hire you with this process that is our actual process. We won't hire you for a React position. Like, so this is how broken the interview process
Yeah.
is.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's that
That,
hurts
that
to hear.
yeah, totally. Well, Matias Torreblanca says, how is working at Vercel? Strange thing that I never asked Goncy. Well, I always try to not talk about Vercel because I know we can talk of like a lot of things. So I just say, I don't know if I can talk about it and just don't answer. Um, so
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. I try to I definitely respect that. It's nice to have um ties or separation between your your personal streams or the things that you're doing for your own account and things that you do for work. The lines are a little more blurry for me, but I still try to keep my what is Lee Rob and what is me
exactly.
joining a stream to talk about Lee versus what is me joining a stream to talk about Vercel. So, you know, for me and for context, I'm here today just talking about Lee Rob and the
Lira.
things that I do. But in terms of Vercel, I really like working here, you know, because I feel like I am empowered to do my best work. And for me, what that looks like is I get so much fulfillment out of helping developers succeed and educating them. And the fact that I get to do that for my job is very, very incredible. And I'm very grateful to have that as a position. So I really enjoy working here. We have many great people who um, are just wonderful. Like
Yeah.
one of the best parts is some of the people that we work with. So and you included. So I'm really glad that you're
Thanks.
you're one of my coworkers.
Now, I really love the first thing I said when I joined Vercel is that I got shocked when I saw like the names in Slack. Everyone is so nice in there. So
Hmm.
I'm really, really happy of working with all these people, you included.
Hmm. Yeah.
And yes, I think that something cool about what you said is that the important thing for me today about talking about something is the DevRel position, because I really think that there's a lot of people out there, like I said, you can be the one creating this master Next.js course because no one made it yet. A lot of people thinks that the only way of going to the community, like the front-end community, is just let's create content about it.
Mm.
But there is this entire DevRel thing that people doesn't know about, that can be let's create content, but let's help the community for a company or for a lot of things to
Hmm.
get all of this together. Let's create content. Let's get to reduce the noise between the companies and the community. And
Hmm.
if someone wants to be a DevRel, what's the path that they should follow?
Yeah. You make a good point about the work that happens in the background, the work that's behind the scenes that isn't the conference talk or the YouTube video. And I think without hearing somebody talk about that, you wouldn't necessarily know that that goes on. But it takes an incredible amount of work to facilitate and grow communities It takes an incredible amount of work to design the curriculum for how you learn and how you educate developers, even if you're not involved in, being on camera for the end product. And it takes a lot of work to, write that content, even if you're not the person who's attributed to being the author, ghostwriting per se. The path to getting into DevRel, I think for engineers who have worked in a software engineering position for a number of years, it's easier than if you're starting out fresh because you've had time to kind of evaluate, what do I enjoy doing? What do I not enjoy doing? And at that point, if you're a few years into your software engineering or your programming journey and you decide, I'm not getting as much fulfillment out of building a product or, working on an internal tool or whatever you're applying your programming skills for, if you get more fulfillment out of maybe writing when you talk to your teammates, or you get more fulfillment out of, um, working on open source, if that's a part of your company, then potentially DevRel could be something that you're interested in. I think for people who are, you know, brand new, whether they just learned how to program or they went to boot camp or university, and they're fresh out of school. For these type of people who are evaluating doing DevRel, the truth is that the path is less clear because the way that people do DevRel at each company is a little bit different. So some companies have a very product focused DevRel. And the DevRels are engineers who are helping shape the developer experience of the product. And that's the main thing that they work on. Other companies, DevRel is largely about marketing. It's about helping with purely around the content and getting that content out into the world. At some companies, it's actually called developer marketing. And then at other companies, it's largely just about the community piece. Help us talk to developers. Our existing marketers, our existing product folks aren't connecting with the developer. We need somebody to help bridge the gap between those two. And that's a pretty common spot as well too. So depending on the company that you're going to talk to, or depending on where your strengths are, any one of those avenues can be something worth exploring. I know that for me, like one of the ways that all signs pointed to something that looked something like DevRel was, I'm I'm naturally the type of person that gets really excited about projects that are involved with a lot of people, because I like all the different parts of what it means to build a product. I like the design part. I like the product building part. I like marketing. I like talking about the product. I love the engineering behind it. I geek out about the details of how things are built. I like the sales part of it. I like having people be happy when they purchase something because
Yeah.
it helps solve a problem for them. And like all of those things help make DevRel a really incredible field to be in.
Yeah, I really think DevRel is awesome. And I get really happy when these features, like I know a feature that people will love, it's
Yeah.
nearly to be when on-demand ESR was announced internally, and they'll say, "Hey, you will have to work on an example for on-demand ESR," and I say, "For what?" Like I have been waiting this for 2 years.
Yes.
I scream it in my house and say, "Man, I can't believe this." And it's so great. I'm so grateful of having this opportunity because I really love to work in a product that helps other people, and it really makes happy other people.
Mhm.
It's awesome. I really like all the work related to DevRel. I don't think Belle is so happy about me liking all these things because she will say, "Okay, you will live for DevRel," and I will say, "I don't know." Sometimes. Um,
Bell is great. We
Belle's
love
great.
Bell.
Yeah, we love Belle. she has been on the stream like 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago. We talked about web performance, and the next day I got like 30 messages of people, where can I learn web performance? And she got like a lot of messages saying, hey, where I can. So we started talking about, hey, we should make some kind of content for all these people asking for web performance. So being on the stream and talking about all this also triggers a lot of actions for the community. Bell is awesome. I really, really love Bell. Nicole Amdel says, how should we approach our career? This is more related. Probably we can answer all these questions in Discord. We are here to talk about the awesome Leroy and why his place is so nice. Suna says, an example of URL state in Amazon and how you can send a link and load the same state through query params. It's a good example. Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating how widely used URL state is. It's sneaky. It's very good. It kind of makes you realize that the power of persisting state outside of the browser. So whether that's a URL because it's persisting across sessions, but also server side state. Like there's a time and place for both.
Yep. Also, there's a thin line between it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing when people start wondering, hey, how it's the max length of a URL?
Oh yeah.
So you are storing too much things in there. Don't do it. And related to next, query params are also a really nice thing, because right now the static pages you generate when doing get static props are also generated based on the query parameters. So you can really create new pages based on those query parameters. Yeah. Not so good because you don't have access to those query parameters on get static props, but who knows? Probably you don't need it. Nicholas says, what are your future goals?
Good question. My future goals are to I get really inspired by the next generation of developers. And when I look at the next generation developers and I see how they're learning, it kind of gives me a little bit of pause, because I look at how I learned how to program, and it's so much different than the way that, people in high school right now, or even younger in some instances, are learning how to code. And I get really inspired by those people, and I want to help enable this next generation of developers to build sites and products and bring them online. And for me, I think what that means is keeping myself rooted in the fundamentals when I teach concepts. So, Next.js is great and it gives you a lot of optimizations, but a lot of those optimizations are rooted in fundamentals of building a really great website. For example, images are a majority of the web. They make up a lot of most websites. And loading them well is a very difficult and nuanced thing that requires a lot of research and understanding to execute on it well. So my goal is to take the research and the implementations that have been, some of the best engineers in the world have figured out the solution for how to load images in the most, the fastest way possible. One, help build that into components that lower the barrier to entry for everyone in the world. So something like an image component. And two, educate developers on these tools, why they matter, and why having a fast website is important. Because at the end of the day, the topics that I want to talk about are more than just a framework. They're more than just React. It's just building really good websites.
Yep. I think that's really important. Teaching people the importance of core web vitals and web performance, and why an image could be like 10 times the size of your entire application. Like helping people to understand those things that independent of the framework, I think it's really nice.
Mhm.
Hassan said, we have Hassan here sharing us, Goncy. If Bell sees this message, I will get fired tomorrow. Uh, um, IMyArg says, what do you think the future of low code and no code workflows inside of React ecosystem?
This is a really fascinating space for me. And I've had the opportunity to get to try a lot of these tools, especially the ones that are built on React, because the value prop of it is very appealing. It's like so many teams are building with React. And the fact that you can build a layer of abstraction on top and then still have the option to export to React code is wild. Like that's so cool. And I've probably tried 10 or so of these tools. And for the right for the right person, they're an absolute game changer. Like one of my favorites is super.so
Ah, very
because
nice.
they allow you to take a Notion page, which I use Notion all the time, and turn it into a website. And one thing that they've done really well is the templates that they provide are really well designed. And I look at the templates of like how you can get started and I think, wow, like sometimes it'd be easier just to start here than pulling out my editor and coding up a site and, messing around with CSS. And I think for me, we're going to see the lines blur a little bit or the barrier to entry be shrunk between a Squarespace Webflow, you know, really high level, well known tool that's a no code, low code editor. This middle ground, which is the more of the low code side of React builders, and then, actually just coding it. On that spectrum, I think we're going to see the low code tools move a little bit further over to where they're more broadly accessible and are actually a better use case for a lot more people in the future. Especially, if I'm trying to launch, a quote unquote marketing site, it could be a lot faster for me to just use one of those kind of site builders.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites related to low code is the integration. Once Next.js landed the URL imports,
Yeah.
Framer landed
Mhm.
this. How do you implement URL imports from Framer in Next.js? And you can basically go to Framer and you design an entire thing basically to how you do it in Figma, for example, with variants and everything. And you have a handshake link, and it will give you a link, and you basically import that URL, and it will give you back a component, and all the options for that component will be props for your component.
Mm.
So basically, you can have two different layouts. For example, a card with a header, an image, and a title and description. And you can say, hey, I have this other variant that it's the same component, but the full image. So you import, like you click, you copy that link, you put it in your application. You use that component that you toggle a local state to change between those states. And it even has animations. Like you click the image and it will slide up and cover the rest of the components.
Yeah.
And
Framer's great.
man, that's awesome. Uh, that's awesome. Great tool. Nordham says, do you still work remotely? Do you think it's more productive?
Yes, I still work remotely full time. Is it more productive? I think
Questionable.
that questionable. I think it's the thing that I like about remote work is that it allows me to design work around my life and not the other way around. And that's really important for me because, sometimes you can only get a doctor appointment scheduled at 2 p.m. Or sometimes you can only get, you need to go pick up your family or something at 10 a.m. And, at the beginning of my career, I worked at a lot of jobs where you just didn't have that flexibility. It's like, oh, you need to leave. You take time off. Like you have to take paid time off. And I have a lot of friends who work in jobs that still have that sort of structure, and it's definitely a privilege to work in a remote a remote first company and do remote work where I have the flexibility to do that. Now, is it more productive? I think the future of how I want to work is remote work for deep work or like focused learning and you still having some socialization in there. So, maybe you're working remote for the majority of the time, but every few months you have a get together with some people that are maybe in your area, or you have like a quarterly team get together. Just trying to find ways, post pandemic for us to reconnect and get a hangout outside of just only knowing people through a computer screen.
Awesome. I will go through some questions that are not questions so we can clean up the queue.
Yeah, sure.
It's MR Juan B says, every time I need a user auth solution, I went to the same Liros video.
Nice.
Nice. Quizzes are a joke. Okay, this was back from the quiz question. Probably the search bar stores my context. It's not so good. Just store like small things and then use that small things to build your application. Some small questions. Someone else are practicing their English. Yeah, I'm practicing my English too here. What are the best CMS to work with next? This is, of course, an opinionated question.
Yeah. So I think that one of the really great things about Next.js is that it gives you the interface between your front end and your data, and it makes that contract such that it's easy to change providers of content or your database as necessary. I think from my experience, I've enjoyed using Contentful a lot. I've enjoyed using Dado CMS as well. Sanity is another one that I've enjoyed using. I haven't tried them all, but I've tried a few and I've really enjoyed using them. I use Contentful the most because that's what we use for Vercel.com. So I'm pretty happy with that one.
Yeah, I haven't used a lot of CMSs. I have made like a lot of e-commerce applications with Next.js. And I'm not sure if I'm proud of this, but my favorite CMS for commerce applications is Google Sheets.
Nice. Yeah.
You have this link that you can export from Google Sheets that you publish to web, and it will give you a CSV file. And it's basically an endpoint for a CSV file. So you can ping that endpoint from get static props or whatever, use a CSV parser like Papa Parse, and you can build your entire thing with it. And every time you change something from Google Sheet, it will update on the next call to that endpoint. And the cool thing about this is that mostly e-commerce like administrators, like clients administrators, are not so touchy people. So they are really used to Excel or Google Sheets. So you don't have to implement authentication because Google Sheets are protected by users. You don't have to create an admin panel. You don't have to do a lot of things like bulk editing. You have a lot of things. Other application that I used Google Sheets for, it was like a panel where people voted their like salaries anonymously, and it using a Google form, and that will feel like a really really long list in Google Sheet. And I created another page in that Google Sheet that consumed information, filtering the information, like give me the median value for all these results that are React developers with 3 years of experience. So from your application, you consume the sheet that makes the median from the large data set. So you don't have to get all that information and parse it on your client's application or read 20,000 rows. You only like consume the small sheet that already made that in Google Sheet. So you avoid doing a lot of calculation. You can do quite cool things with Google Sheet. I love it. It's not the best thing. It's not for all cases, but
It is good though. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, you can do cool things. Um, in the future, is there a possibility of a development tool that replaces Webpack, but it's in Rust?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So right now, Webpack is probably the most popular way that people bundle their code for production. So they have a bunch of JavaScript files, and Webpack essentially allows you to combine those and determine the areas that are shared between them. And it's written in JavaScript or TypeScript. And because of that, there are limitations at a certain level of performance. You can optimize JavaScript or TypeScript pretty far. And I think largely it has been done in a lot of these tools. But you reach a certain point when you're really trying to get that extra mile of performance where lower level languages like Rust or Go or Zig or anything like that allow you to kind of over optimize and think a little bit more intentionally about the data structures and algorithms that you're using in your application. And that's not for everybody. There's a special type of developer that really enjoys doing that stuff. I'm not really that person. I prefer front end,
Me neither.
but there are a lot of people who really enjoy that stuff. So I do think there's a future where we see a rustified version of Webpack. The current the current working attempt of that is called SWC Pack, which is a a bundler written using SWC, which is a Rust-based tool that Next.js currently uses for compilation and minification. And it's possible to extend that to do bundling as well. But we're talking about a
Major change.
probably like a multi-year
Yeah.
project. It's, I mean, basically, Webpack is like the bedrock of many extremely large applications on the web. So it would have to be very well tested, very well validated, and very slowly rolled out over the course of a decent amount of time. So I do think we will get there, but it won't happen immediately.
Yeah.
One tool that is written in, I believe it's written in Go, is Vite, and it takes a little bit of a different approach because it doesn't do bundling when you're running locally. It's bundleless, but then when you're actually going to production, it uses rollup, which is similar to Webpack, to actually bundle your code for production.
Yeah. I think one of the most complex thing about moving out from Webpack is that most like development servers like Create React App or Next allows you to change Webpack configuration, and a lot of project
Yep.
depends on extending that configuration. So if you will replace Webpack with something else, you will have to be sure that those projects that depends on that Webpack configuration can still working. Of course, it will be a breaking change, but the important thing is to see if you can replace that thing with what it's
Yep.
currently done with Webpack.
Yeah, there's definitely a decent amount of apps with custom Webpack config that exist in the world today. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
complicated. Dom says there is also a question from someone else that I can remember. It's what are your favorite Next.js and Vercel features?
My favorite features, I would say, hmm,
It's an easy one for me.
it's tricky because I like quite a few different things. I'm curious to hear yours, and then I'll reflect on mine
On
here for a
demand
second.
ESR. I have a course, not a course. Like I have a talk that it's called How ISR Saved My Startup, and really saved my startup. And the only thing I was missing was on demand ISR, and I was
Mhm.
really angry because I sold that startup, but I always wanted to implement on demand ISR because it was like the last piece missing in there. and I sold it before on-demand ISR landed. So I always wanted to. So for me, probably because of the context, ISR combined with on-demand ISR are my core favorite features. But what about you?
I think my favorite feature between Next.js and Vercel, just in general, is actually more of a concept of how I think the future of front end infrastructure works. And that's I write code and I get infrastructure generated from code. And really, what that looks like is you think about a database, it's like a Prisma schema file that's in my repository that I'm able to introspect and understand how my database evolves over time. I can then deploy my database based on that spec, right? I think about content. There's a lot of content, headless CMSs or other content systems that are defining their content through code. Like Sanity, you can have a whole custom studio for whatever type of content model you want. When I think about front end infrastructure, the fact that I can just write, pages slash API slash
Uh,
index.js, and I just write a little couple lines of code and I can not have to think about the deployment mechanics of getting that code online as an API endpoint. I think back to when I was learning Node.js and Express, and even the like basic Express tutorials at the time when I was learning, I'm like, this is a little strange because I was I was primarily a front end developer, and it went very quickly from hello world Express app to what am I looking at? Like this is like there's like a million plugins. I don't know anything that's going on in this repo. And when I look at how API routes in Next.js has evolved over time, it's evolved really well where I jump into other people's repositories and I go look at their code and I'm like, "Oh, this makes a ton of sense." I can see how their API is laid out. And I think that's the biggest feature for me is that automatic generation of infrastructure based on the code that I'm writing. As a developer, I just make a good product and then we'll turn it into code when I hit that deploy button.
yeah, and I something I think it really makes a difference. It's I'm doing a front-end application that will consume some information from a database and will display it on the screen. And everything is fine. I already have a mock and I already have my database, and now I have to connect my database to my application. But I can't connect my client-side application to a database because I will
Yep.
expose the credentials and that will be insecure. So I need a server because I need my server to interact with my database and return the information to a client.
Yep.
But I have to create a server. And I
Mhm.
have to deploy the server somewhere else. And it's not so easy for a front-end developer. Like, okay, my hosting hosts static sites. I can put my application in there, but I have to host my Node.js server with Express in some place, and it's not so easy. Like at least for me,
Mhm.
like Heroku
There's a
always. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole category of this that some people refer to as back end for front end.
Yep.
Uh, and at the most simple level, it's I need to connect to some API and it has a private key that I can't expose in the client side. So I have to do that securely. And it's actually kind of incredible when I look back in my history, like the number of hoops that you had to jump through just to get that layer in between of like, I have my front end, I need to connect to this thing, but there needs to be a little bit of business logic in between those two things. And I think Next.js does help simplify that quite a bit.
Yeah. And the first thing that everyone does that it's not okay, it's create an API route, use get server side props or get static props, and fetch that API route. People don't do that. Just connect to your database directly from get static props or get server side props, unless you want to
Mhm.
do some caching or something in the middle. But don't do fetches to your API routes from your page methods. But yeah, I
Mhm.
think that's awesome. And Japiro says, Docker help. Yeah, but I'm a front-end developer. I don't know how to use Docker. At least I don't know how to.
Yeah, learning Docker was an interesting journey for me. When I in my last job, I got experience working with Docker and Kubernetes and doing some of the DevOps type stuff. Uh, Definitely not an expert, but I got to learn the basics of a lot of that stuff. And Docker has a lot of merit and value. But when I think even bigger than that, it's thinking about a world where Docker isn't even necessary, and that's what gets me really excited. But at the same time, while recognizing that it does solve a very
Yeah.
good set of problems for certain apps.
Yeah, I have made some applications using Docker, and it's really nice to say, hey, this will work anywhere, ideally.
Yep.
And you can mount an in-memory database with just a Docker Compose file, and all your applications inside can interconnect each other. Like it really solves a lot of problems. I haven't used Docker a lot, but I have used Docker Compose sometimes, and I think it really helps. But again, hosting something in a static hosting like Fiverr, Surge, Vercel, whatever, it's not so easy as saying, like, it's easier than saying, hey, I have this Docker image. What I can do, I have to host it in some
Hmm.
place. And most of those hosting that supports Docker files are not free as
Yep.
the ones for static hosting. So that's
Hmm.
another pinpoint. I live in a third world country, and paying for features in dollars is not usually a good idea, or something that most people can do.
Hmm.
Do you think you as a team are make the web a better place? What do you What's your opinion about Web3 in comparison with the actual web, and your idea about a better web? Web3 will replace the actual web, or will both coexist together?
Yeah. So the first part of the question about do I think we're making the web a better place? I do. I do think we're making the web a better place by helping educate developers on how to build great web experiences. I mean, if you think about it, from the core of one of the things that drives me nuts is cumulative layout shift. So you go to a news site and a banner pops in your face and then the page shifts down and you can't actually read the content. Like I want to help educate developers on how they fix those things. I want to help build better web experiences so that, you know, my my parents who don't have any idea what that stuff is like can go to their site and not have to um, go to a website and not have to see that stuff. So I do think that we're on a journey to make the web a better place. To the latter part of the question, and I guess how we do that, the specific technologies that enable that, I really think that I believe that empowering developers to build great web applications transcends whatever specific technology or tool that exists. So, you know, a lot of the things that I talk about today still were very relevant and important 10 years ago or 15 years ago. The methods in how we have accomplished that are different. But the root problems, if you stay close to the fundamentals, are still the same. So regardless of how we built apps 10 years ago, how we built apps today, or how we build apps 10 years into the future, if you nail things like how you load images well, how you load third party scripts well, how you effectively style your application, how you add interactivity to your page while understanding that you have potentially have visitors all around the world. You know, we global first is a very real thing nowadays in a global first world that have different varying levels of internet and connectivity and internet speed. So in doing that, I have to design for that entire diverse set of people too. And I think that focusing on those things will transcend, you know, any technology basically.
Yeah, and also I think that related to how we made the web 10 years ago, a lot of things are coming back. Like before,
Mhm.
everyone said, hey, PHP and rendering everything server side is a really good idea. And in the middle, someone say, hey, we can't do that. We have to render everything on the client side. And the SPA went a thing. And now people is saying, hey, why are we not rendering everything server side?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of change in the idea and a lot of problems that we didn't think of before, like performance and being globally available fast
Mhm.
everywhere. But a lot of the ideas of the building blocks of the web are going and uh, like back and forth
Mhm.
between the time. Vercel says, I think I have imposter syndrome. How do I get out of this? It's a really big question.
When you find the answer, let me know.
Please let me know.
Yeah. I think for me, how have I worked over imposter syndrome? I think at a certain point, I had to accept being vulnerable and putting my work online or putting my work in front of other people and accepting that people are going to receive this and feel some way about it, and how they feel about the work that I create doesn't impact me, or I should try to let it not impact me or define me. Because I think that when I was getting started, I had a lot of imposter syndrome about how people would perceive my work. Would they think that I'm a bad developer? Would they think that I don't know what I'm doing? If I put work online, would people just say that I was terrible and that I didn't know what I was talking about? And I think for me, recognizing that, one, no one has that authority to come in and make me feel that way by staying true to myself, I guess. And two, never straying too far away from a beginner's mindset. And with the latter one, I guess what I mean by that is when you look at how people are starting to learn how to program, and how, you individually might have learned how to program, by not straying too far away from that, it can help you get rooted in the fundamentals and the basics that enable you to more critically think through more advanced topics. So sometimes imposter syndrome rears its head when you're trying to tackle a really difficult problem that you've never seen before. And in those situations, being grounded in first principles and grounded in the fundamentals helps you move through it more effectively. And another, just on like a more real note about imposter syndrome, I sometimes I joke that like a senior developer is just somebody who has already seen that problem before. Like they've literally just
It's
already
good.
seen it before. Because a lot of coding is like pattern recognition. Like, oh, I've ran into this really strange issue before where my local server isn't working. Like, I know how to handle this. Or like, oh yeah, like I've ran into this issue where something happened and I've already solved it before. And a senior developer, a more experienced developer, has just built up a library of those things that they can pull from. So it always gets better over time.
Yeah, I think you never get out of it. You just learn to
Mhm.
live with it. You have to assume that all the time there's people that will know more about you, but there's a
Yep.
lot of people that feels entitled just to bash to you about knowing less than other people, and no one should do
Mhm.
it. So people will still do it. You have to say, hey, these people is just telling me this because I have something to do in a better way, or it's just raging because we are on internet and people love to rage against things. If you
Mhm.
think you can get something from someone's comment, you have to take that information and use it to grow and learn something new. But if you think people is just telling you something because they want to hurt you or hurt something you made, you have to learn to how to ignore it, to avoid it.
Mhm.
Um, I have a really good community, and I love how lovely the community is, and I'm really grateful about that. But there is so much hate in the entire community. like outside of my community, like in the tech community. I
Mhm.
just try to like get out of those places.
Yeah, I keep it rooted in 2 things, and that's 1, I am fundamentally an optimist, and I try to be a positive person, and, it's harder some days, uh, but I try to stay rooted in that and see the best in people because it's a good part for being DevRel because sometimes people will come to me and they'll be very frustrated that something doesn't work. And I have to remember, I have to have empathy for that person and put myself in their shoes and understand that I get it. Like I have been frustrated when my code doesn't work and understand that the majority of people probably aren't malicious. And it helps me de-escalate the situation from kind of a lack of clarity in online communication because you can lose a lot of sentiment and meaning through a tweet. It can sound like somebody is very mean when really they had good intentions. And being optimistic about people uh, has worked well for me.
Nice. And we have a lot of questions regarding to that. Luis Sidev says, how was your learning process? Did you have many problems trying to learn to program? Could you give us some tips on how to overcome programming frustration?
Yeah, I struggled to learn how to program. I went to university to be a programmer because I thought it sounded fun, not because I had any
I
prior
was wrong,
experience.
right?
Uh, and in my first class, the professor asked, "How many people here have had prior programming experience?" And like 3/4 of the class raised their hand. So I'm sitting here very, like, talk about imposter syndrome. I was very overwhelmed and nervous that I was already behind everybody else. And my first couple years of university were really tough because we were learning like Java and C, and it just didn't. I didn't. I didn't know this at the time, but it didn't resonate with me because I was such a visual learner. Like if we would have started with HTML and CSS, I would have had a much better time. I would have
Yeah,
been way more excited about the work. It
totally.
wasn't until, a few years in when I started to do web development, I was like, "Oh yeah, like this is
This makes
awesome."
sense. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
see
this
what I'm
makes
doing.
yeah. And that was just how I wanted to build. Like the fundamental idea of being able to build your ideas is like the coolest thing in the world, where I can wake up someday and just be like, I have this amazing idea. No one can stop me. I'll just work all day and I'll build this thing. And I put this thing on the online into the world. And I did this. I built this thing from scratch. Like the fact that that is a skill that I have worked to build is a really, really exciting and empowering part of being a programmer. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's a cool saying. There's people that say, "Hey, I want to have my own clothing shop," and they have to like get the shop, buy the things, do a lot of things until they have like their shopping and they can start selling clothes. And you
Mhm.
can wake up one morning and say, "Hey, I have this idea," and you go like for an hour or two, you npx Vercel it, and you already have it online. Like
Yeah.
the time between the idea and the product, it's like it can be hours. So that's it's something awesome about our tech and web programming.
Yeah, absolutely.
um, Pepa says, I love to know if he has mentors, people who have inspired him to be who he is today.
So this might I don't know, maybe this is like a hot take or a controversial take, but I feel like the best mentors I've ever had didn't realize they were my mentors.
I think
Like,
it's okay. It's the
yeah,
most common case, right?
the the best mentors I've ever had were people who maybe indirectly had a really big impact on my career. And there's obvious ones. Like I've had some good examples of bosses throughout my career who've really showed me what it means to care about people you work with and to um, bet on people's and the longevity of their career. But I've also just had coworkers that I work with that didn't even realize that they were indirectly mentoring me or helping me grow as a developer, but had a really big impact on my career. So I'm very thankful to a lot of those people. And then I guess outside of my professional career, I am very grateful for my family for just keeping me grounded in a lot of things and helping me be a better person. I think they're a very great indirect mentor as well too, or I guess more direct in that sense. But they've definitely helped me a lot as I progressed into. Uh, I'm almost 30 now, which is kind of fun. So
Me too.
yeah,
I will be 30 on May.
nice.
Oh man.
It's
Uh,
it's a strange thing to reflect on because it's like it's quite literally a new chapter of our lives. And with that comes the reflection of the previous 10 years and what's got us to today. So,
yeah, I think that something really important is in this journey there I had all these mentors. I always say Mara Ares was a teacher from the university. She teach me a lot of things. She introduced me in programming. Um, I think Bell is a mentor I had. I knew that was a boss from a previous work. Leon, that was a coworker. Uh, and I really like, or I would really love to be mentor of these people to help them as these all these mentors helped me along all the journey. So
absolutely.
it's trying to give something back to the community that I got from the community without asking it. So
Yes.
it's a depth we have with the people that helped us, like trying to spread the word as they did with us. So I really
I love
love,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Suno says, what's your opinion on if you can't find a solution, change the problem?
That's awesome. I love that. There's some truth to that. Um, it's all in how you frame the problem. Maybe you're asking the wrong question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's something we do a lot of times. Like we are having an issue, or we say, hey, we have to get this feature out, and we try to convince ourselves this is not so important, and we try
Mhm.
to see the things with another glasses, saying, hey, probably this is not a good idea for the project, and we try to convince or change the perspective to not having that problem anymore. I think it's a really good phrase.
Yeah, it's like when something as an engineer, like when something you're trying to ship something and it's down to the final hours, and then the product manager or somebody else says like, "Oh, what about this thing?" And you'll make every
No, man.
excuse in the book. Like you're like, "Well, it's actually going to take 40 weeks to do that, so let's just put it in the backlog."
Yeah, for next sprint. Let's give it in the next sprint.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
Uh, let's do the last questions. Lee, is there a moment for every front-end developer where one has to make a deep dive into UX UI design?
I don't think that you have to, but it definitely helps. And I think that there are multiple layers to what is the front end today. There are certain people who are very interested in front end infrastructure and front end tooling. And for those people, they might actually be writing Rust code. They might be helping build the the framework for how you interact with your front end. And those type of developers, they don't really have to care about design very much. Actually, most of them don't care about design at all. But for people who are more drawn to the visual side of front end development, I would strongly recommend trying to learn more about design. You don't need to be a full designer, but at least understanding some of the concepts will help you communicate with designers better. And it builds empathy for how designers build web applications. I believe that the best products are built with an intense care for design. And the more that engineers can learn about the design of building a product, I think the better off they are.
Yeah, we have coworkers that are really, really uh, awesome design people.
Mhm,
Well, it's not with us anymore, but Rauno, um,
mhm,
awesome guy.
mhm.
Well, we have Paco. Paco,
Yep.
it's great, great
Yeah.
guy.
Pa yeah, Paco, it was a huge inspiration for me for the type of designers and developers and the people who do both with the level
Oh man,
of
I
skill as an individual, like
he's
either
great in
one of
both.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're excellent at both. I think Shu is another incredible designer
he's a
and
machine.
developer.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
great. Yeah, we have so many talented people.
Mhm.
We can talk about this, but Vercel has convinced to joining his team best developer in the scene. And yeah, that's right. How they do it? You can know it. How did they convince you? Secrets. Um,
uh, I would say that fundamentally, people wanting to join Vercel comes down to alignment with our vision and what we're trying to accomplish. Because the reality is, we're still a relatively smaller company. I think we're at like 250 people, um, which compared to a lot of other companies is still pretty small. So, in joining a startup that's growing quickly, you have to be aligned with what they're trying to do. And if you get out of bed in the morning and you're really excited about building fast websites, then maybe Vercel's a good place for you to come, make the web a little bit faster, a little bit better.
yeah,
If you really geek out about the web, then yeah, it's a good place to do that.
and you already said like most of the people that joined Vercel, it's people that was involved in Vercel before joining Vercel. Like my coworker
Mhm,
Luis was a core Next.js contributor before joining Vercel. I had to
mhm,
convince Vercel to uh, to hire me, like doing things like I made a provider for Next.js Commerce. I gave
mhm,
talks and things to for Bell to ask me, hey, do you want to get through a process with Vercel?
mhm,
Most of the people inside Vercel, like you made the Master Next.js course and you made a lot of content along Next.js before joining Vercel. Like most of the
yeah,
people inside was related to Vercel before joining Vercel.
mhm.
Um, so I think it's awesome. Pepa says, congratulations, Rob. You sound very real. It's key that someone in a role lead like you has this positive message for the community. It's great to know you.
Thank you.
Genius, Pepa. Love
I
you, Pepa.
appreciate that.
I have seen the interview with Lee and Rich Harris, and I didn't really get how Vercel is involved in Svelte future. I'd like to hear some thoughts about that. I don't
Yeah,
really know. We have a post for that also, right? That it's
yeah,
called the
yeah. We do.
future of Svelte.
We have a post for Rich joining, and talks about what's happening there. I'm personally super excited about it. Basically, the TLDR is that we're just helping Rich work on Svelte full time, and we believe that Svelte will help make a faster web. I'm I think the work being done on Svelte Kit is very exciting, and I'm really excited to help enable Rich and the Svelte core team and all the people who contribute to that to make it a really great place to build for the web.
Yeah, I just shared the interview that you made to Rich, awesome
Mhm.
guy, and it talks about that. And
Yeah.
the last question: which one do you prefer for coding? 100% keyboard or 10 keyless or 60%?
So I have a controversial opinion here. I use the Mac wireless keyboard. Yes,
It's
I don't.
okay.
I have. So I've tried mechanical keyboards. I've tried um, a bunch of different ones, and I keep coming back to the Mac wireless keyboard, which isn't even. It's not even 60%. I don't think, right? Or is
I,
it 60%?
I think it's 10 kilos, but
Yeah.
it might be 60%. I always thought I have this one. I really love it. It's
Yeah.
a 100% Logitech and 915.
Yeah.
It's low profile, and I really love it. The, with a low profile keyboard, um, you really feel the difference when you code. Before I had this one, don't ask why I have so many keyboards in my. It was a
Yeah.
thankless. There's also I don't like these ones that doesn't have the keys, the arrow keys in it. I think this is
Yep.
thankless. And I have tried this monstrosity, like the split keyboard.
Yeah. I
Not for
can't do
me.
it. I can't do it.
Yeah,
Oh
not for. Yeah, well,
my
overheated, right?
yeah, my camera overheated. I gotta toggle it back
Yeah,
on.
we are almost finishing, but I found something. You are using a like a Sony camera or something.
Mhm.
There is an option. If you are using a dummy battery, you can
Mhm.
say, "Hey, just like change how much heat the camera should have before turning off." It
Mm.
has never powered off again. And
Wow,
it's
I need to do
safe.
that.
Yeah, it's safe if you are using a dummy battery. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you can Google it. It's like going back to the camera, two things, and never again.
Nice. I'm gonna have to do that.
Yeah, it happened a lot on the stream. So uh, just something to know you. Um, all the international guests gets a free candy box. Uh,
Nice.
Rich got it like last week, I think, and it's full of Argentinian candy. Do you like dulce de leche or
That
caramel?
sounds incredible. I would love
Do
that.
you like Nutella? It's
Yeah.
similar. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
you will get some alfajores with dulce de leche. I will ask you for your postal address, and I will send you a box later.
Awesome. Thank
Um,
you.
and Lee, again, thank you for being here, for sharing your knowledge with us. If you type exclamation mark guest, you will have the Lero portfolio page, and you will have all his like social networks to follow him.
Mhm.
We will still be online a couple of minutes because we have to do a raffle, a giveaway. But again, Lee, thank you for being here, and
Yes.
glad you came.
Thank you for having me. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in and asked questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lee.